Message from the Senate, Madam Speaker. I hereby announce that the Senate has concurred and adopted the report of the Conference Committee on Senate File Number 23-7, an act relating to cannabis. The message is signed Thomas S. Bodern, Secretary of the Senate. The report is addressed to the Honorable Bobby Joe Champion, President of the Senate, the Honorable Lisa M. Damuth, Speaker of the House. We, the undersigned conferees for Senate File Number 2370, report that we've agreed upon the items in dispute and recommend as follows. The report is signed by 4 of the 4 members on the part of the House and 2 of the 3 members on the part of the Senate. Stevenson moves that the report of the Conference Committee on Senate File Number 2370 be adopted and that the bill be repassed as amended by the Conference Committee.
I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative Stevenson, to explain the report.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, we had a really productive conference committee, and especially want to thank Representative West for his collaboration and work on this. We did prevail on most of the House provisions, and we did make a few additional changes, including directing the Office of Cannabis Management to come back to this body with a streamlining proposal in the medical space. That was very important to Representative West, and I'm glad we were able to get that done. We also did do something to make sure that we have more testing capacity, which will be important as the market launches later this year, and a few other changes, including an expungement provision. But I think we had a very collaborative, good conference committee with a good result, and I urge members to support adoption of the report.
Is there any discussion to the conference committee report? I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would urge members to support this conference report adoption. The bill got marginally better, and it brings us one step closer to having a safe, tested, and legal market in Minnesota.
Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion to adopt the conference committee report say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails. The clerk will give the bill its 3rd reading as amended by conference.
Senate File Number 2370, 3rd reading as amended by conference.
3rd reading as amended by conference. Any further discussion? I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, May 30th, 2023, Minnesota legalized adult use cannabis. November 7th, 2023, Ohio legalized adult use cannabis. Ohio now has nearly a $500 million market. Meanwhile, Minnesota, with our 6-month head start, has, let me see here, not a single licensed store. We could do a lot better. Thankfully, this bill does help. We have a hopelessly convoluted regulatory system based on this fantasy that you can create a craft cannabis market based on government regulation. It's like trying to run Amazon out of an Etsy store with 3 inspectors checking the doilies for antitrust violations. We're inching closer to a legal, safe, and tested market thanks to this bill, so I'd urge support. And while it could be better, many of these businesses are set up to fail because of this regulatory system, just like we saw with the medical cannabis market, and the 2 original operators had to be sold because the market was so heavily regulated. And now, before a single license is issued, the tax rate's going to go up 50% because Governor Walz wouldn't sign a budget without tax increases. So this bill moves us closer to a legal, safe, and tested market. It helps hemp businesses continue to compete, as they have been for several years in our state, by exporting their products, their federally legal products, to other states, even if Minnesota's excessive regulation make them not allowed here. It helps the medical cannabis businesses continue to provide needed medicine to medical patients by relieving a little bit of the regulatory burden. And as Chair Stevenson mentioned, we will work to unify the supply chain, which if I explain that to you right now, you'd just be mystified of how this came to be. And there's a lot of support around that, and I'm very appreciative of it. And lastly, for these people who want to get involved in this new market, we're moving one step closer so they can finally pursue their dream. And honestly, it is the American dream to start a business and provide for your family. And that's what a lot of people have been waiting to do. President Trump voiced support for cannabis legalization on the ballot measure in Florida. He's even talked about rescheduling cannabis federally, which would be a needed reform and would help immensely every business access needed tax deductions and investments that they could get if it wasn't a federally illegal substance. And consequently, after he voiced that support, his share in the last election of the youth vote did go up 10 points. So for those who need that to convince them, I would highly encourage you to investigate that. States like Missouri, Montana, and Ohio have demonstrated that, hey, Republicans can do this right. And I am happy to work across the aisle, work as we can to make a functional market that can both provide the needed increased public safety around the product, around the businesses, and also, to the Democrats' point, relieve some of the, what we'd call an unjust punishment over a meaningless offense. So, members, this bill makes a needed step in the right direction to get us to a safe and legal market. It helps our hemp businesses who deal in a federally legal product, and it helps our medical combination businesses maintain their existence, really, because what we've seen is Minnesota's regulatory structures make it hard to grow and thrive. So, members, I'd encourage a green vote on this bill.
I recognize a member from Anoka, Representative Stevenson.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you again, Representative West, for your work on this. You know, there's a lot of provisions in this bill that I think are important and significant and will help move our nascent cannabis marketplace forward in Minnesota. You know, one of the more significant ones relates to a provision allowing for the licensing of wholesalers for low-potency hemp beverages. And I want members to know that these low-potency hemp beverages are a real Minnesota creation and something that is a nation-leading thing that has been really productive for our local breweries in particular. I'm not sure if members realize that alcohol sales generally and beer sales in particular are on the decline, and I, for one, blame the young people. It's the young people who are apparently not drinking beer. It's a problem. But a lot of our little craft breweries across Minnesota are struggling right now due to declining sales in the beer space. And many of them have found significant economic gain by taking up these low-dose hemp THC products, which, as I said, really started here in Minnesota. You know, when we passed in 2022 a provision clarifying the legality of low-dose hemp derived products. A lot of those breweries really took the initiative and built this industry that has really spread across the country. In fact, our model for regulating these products, which we passed in 2023, has become a model that's used around the country. And it's kept a lot of breweries in Minnesota that otherwise would have gone out of business in business, which of course is good for small businesses all across the state. There are local breweries in my district in Coon Rapids and Anoka that are just, you know, important parts of our community, and we want to keep them around. They're employers, they are good meeting places, they're just very valuable elements of our community. But it's also important, those are, you know, for folks who have been involved in liquor law in the past, you know, there's different aspects of the industry, right? There's the retail part of the industry, and there's the production part, but in between there's this wholesaler segment. How do you get your product from manufacturing to an actual retail marketplace? We need a healthy wholesaling industry in Minnesota. That's a very important thing to keep this industry moving forward. And unfortunately, with cannabis still being illegal on a federal level, any business that has interaction with a cannabis license could potentially have unfavorable tax consequences at the federal level. So we have to have a whole separate lane of licensure for these low-dose products. And one thing that was missing going into this year was a element for the wholesalers. So we added that, and that has the added benefit of driving some licensing revenue, which has modestly helped in the commerce target space. So Chairs Herr and O'Driscoll can thank this bill for making their target a little easier to reach. There still is a lot of work to be done in the medical space. We want to make sure that every patient who relies upon that system in order to get the medicine they need is able to do so. You may think, for example, why is this so important if we're going to have adult use, if we're going to have a legal cannabis marketplace? Why is it important to preserve a medical marketplace? But it's important to understand that some people who rely on cannabis as medicine are not able to purchase adult use cannabis because they are not adults. Kids who have serious seizure disorders rely on cannabis to treat their condition, and we need to make sure we have a productive medical cannabis marketplace in order to ensure that those kids are still able to get their medicine. So we made some steps on this year, further enhancing the medical program, but there's certainly more work to be done, as Representative West noted, trying to get that streamlining to make sure it's economically viable. That's something that's very important. I also do want to take a moment and just comment that on another thing that is still yet to be done, which is to make sure we're all on the same page about what kind of local control is necessary, because that's at the stage in the market launch where we are now. OCM has issued preliminary approval to many licensees who are out talking to your cities and counties, trying to get the last registration that's necessary in order to actually open their business. And I think we're seeing some different results in different places. And someone who's worked very hard on this is Representative Hansen. So, Madam Speaker, would Representative Hansen yield to a question?
Representative Hansen will yield to a question. Representative Stevenson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Representative Hansen, if you could comment on the current state of play among local control and what you think needs to happen going forward.
Representative Hansen.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair Stevenson. I'm happy to go ahead and talk a little bit about this. I did talk in the conference committee yesterday, so I'd invite folks to go ahead and watch that and catch up on the full speech. I won't repeat that here, but it's important to understand that a critical aspect of our legalization structure is a partnership with our local governments. We passed this law knowing that we respected local control and placed just 2 responsibilities on our locals. So it's important that we support them in that. I tried to get some language across the finish line that was bipartisan, and our conference committee was ready to support that, but unfortunately that wasn't something we could get done without the supports of the league and the association. So we want to encourage folks to talk to your locals, make sure that they understand what those 2 responsibilities are, because that is going to be critical. Any delays that happen in the industry beyond what Democrats and more across the aisle have quoted in the paper and across on media as being a launch in early 2025 will unfortunately fall on the shoulders of our locals, and we don't want that. So I think that's important for everyone here to know, and thank you, Chair Stevenson.
Representative Stevenson.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Representative Hansen. I appreciate that information, and I appreciate all the work on this committee. We had also some great staff support. Thank you in particular to the amazing Jack Dockendorf. Of course, Ben Johnson is just a treasure to this institution, and Faith Prevette, my LA, would also work very hard. And with that, I'd ask members for a yes vote.
There being no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will close the roll. There being 80 ayes and 50 nays, the bill is passed as amended by conference and its title is agreed to.